Okay, welcome to the Business and Balance podcast. I am Sam Boxall, and today we've got the amazing Rachael. You're going to hear loads more about her as we do go through this, but I want to just dive straight in and we'll fill in some more of the blanks as we go along. So welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's lovely to have you here for sure. Before we go into any details, I thought it might be a good idea. Given that the audience is probably people who are maybe into business and productivity and all that kind of stuff, I want to know actually what like a regular work day looks like for you, because I expect it's very different for everyone and certainly very different for you.
Yeah.
So what happens? Just give me a outline.
Yeah. So I'm a paediatrician and I work in hospital. So the day can be pretty variable depending on what I'm doing. But if we talk about a typical day when I'm on call, so we get up at kind of 5:36. We have to get out the house by 7. Drop little one off at nursery at 7:30.
Okay.
Because then I've got a little bit over an hour commute at the minute. As junior doctors, we get kind of rotated around different hospitals. We don't get a whole lot of choice in that.
Okay.
So long commute at the moment, but that's okay. Get to work for kind of 8:39, and then if I'm on call, I'll take handover from the night team. So the guys who've been looking after the kids overnight, hear about all the kids, and then we'll start a ward round. So it'll be me, one of my bosses, the consultants, and a couple of juniors. We'll split into teams and go around and see everyone on the 2 wards, kind of assessing kids, making plans for the day. We'll have a catch-up around lunchtime, usually have a working lunch. So there's usually meetings or teaching or something going on over lunchtime. So get some food in where you can. And then the afternoon is kind of getting jobs done for kids. So blood tests, cannulas, organising scans, chatting to parents about results, any of that kind of stuff. And then in the evening, if I'm on call, from about 5, I'll take over not just the children's wards, but the neonatal intensive care, labour ward, postnatal wards, and also all the new referrals of ill children coming from A&E, GPs, minor injuries, all come to me in the evening. So then the evening can either be not too bad, or if there's a really sick premature baby born, I might spend my whole evening with that baby, just stabilising.
Yeah.
So it's all about going where your skills are most useful, most needed.
Yeah. Okay.
So I finish around 10. Get home around 11.
Long
and then
days.
Go again. Yeah.
I hadn't checked that out in advance. I didn't want to do too much digging around what a typical paediatrician day was like, because I wanted to hear it firsthand. But from that, exactly as I thought, it sort of feels like you're getting pulled in maybe a million directions throughout the whole day, which is so the opposite of probably what maybe sometimes feels like being really productive, because you're just getting tugged everywhere, and maybe it's if you could only work 4 hours a day, what would you do?
So I think the NHS is this vast machine that, as a result of it being so big, has just so many inefficiencies built into it. And I think that most doctors would say that the bit of their job that they really enjoy is the direct patient care that actually benefits their patients.
Right.
The things I enjoy are seeing a child who's poorly, deciding what I think needs doing it, and then doing something to make them feel better.
Yeah.
But a lot of my day is taken up with being on hold, waiting for various teams that I want to speak to get a specialist opinion, or computer systems that don't work, or all these inefficiencies that just spiral and build up. So the thing that I would want to do is the direct patient care that actually helps people.
Yeah.
And makes me feel, like I've got some benefit from my day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's understandable. I've been trying to think, like, before having you here today, I initially thought there would be so many crossover points between working, such a high level, high intensity job and running businesses, doing your own thing. And there is so many things that are very, very similar. And one of those things is the sort of emotional drain and physical drain of not only having the pressure, but also the sheer volume of hours you put into what you're doing. And that's definitely something that, you know, you hear about business owners hitting burnout all the time. People that are starting companies, that they leave their 9 to 5 and end up working 24/7 and think they're going to achieve some kind of freedom from it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming similarly to like in the world of entrepreneurs, in the world of doctors, there must be some burnout going on with those kinds of shifts.
Yeah. There's massive burnout that goes on with those kind of shifts, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's for a majority of people. It's related to the hours. I think a lot of it is related to a kind of feeling of a lack of control.
Right.
So, as I was saying, you know, you don't necessarily get much choice about where you get sent for your training.
Yeah.
And then also just within your day, my day is totally unpredictable, really. You have a vague plan of what you're going to try and do, but if a baby gets born 3 months early, you know, your whole plan is derailed because you have to focus on that baby and saving that baby's life.
Yeah.
So, and that can take the rest of your day. So I think it's just that constant unpredictability is difficult. And then the nature of what we're dealing with is emotional.
Yeah.
And I think there's at the minute, a lot of kind of moral injury that's going on in the NHS. So by that, I mean, a lot of doctors don't feel that we're able to provide the level of care that we would want to some patients.
Right.
Because of the amount of overwhelm that's happening within the system. There's just so many patients that a lot of the time we're just not doing as good a job as we would want to.
Yeah.
And that hurts.
Yeah.
That is not what people want to be able to provide.
No.
So I think the moral injury, the lack of control, combined with the hours, leads to a lot of burnout.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. I think similarly, on a completely different emotional scale, it's exactly the same thing in probably lots of industries where people are getting pushed hard. It does, a lot of it does come down to a lack of control, actually. And, you know, you can have just a little shift in your day. And if you've got, you've got a set of tasks for the day, you've got a big plan, things you want to achieve and goals you've got to try and hit. And then if all that gets thrown out the window, it is tricky.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there any little habits or little hacks or things that maybe you've tried to do physically or mentally throughout the day to try and prepare yourself for that turmoil and up and down nature of the job?
Yeah, you know, the one thing that I think for me plays a huge role in my day is that especially if I'm working a long day and working those long hours, I get a lot of decision fatigue. I'm constantly being asked to make decisions, which are quite important, because some of them might be life and death decisions. But then there's a lot of lower level decisions that need to be made. Do you want to stop the antibiotics on this kid? Can this kid go home? You know, just constant decisions that you're being asked to make. And by the time you get to 4 or 5 o'clock, you just want to scream at people. So I feel like I've tried to take away decisions in my day that don't matter. Yeah. So just like little things, like before I go to bed, I'll get stuff ready for lunch, get out what we're having for dinner the next day, all of that, so that when I wake up in the morning, I don't have to decide what I'm having for lunch. I don't have to decide what I'm having for dinner. I don't have to decide what I'm giving my little boy for breakfast. It's already done. Yeah. Because it's just any decision that I can take out of my day helps with my mindset for the rest of the day. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we only have 7 good decisions in a day. And then that's it. It's all over from there. You've pretty much only got the brain space to make 7 good ones. But prioritizing those high level decisions, and that's something I've been working on actually for the last few months, is trying to systematize as much as I can so I'm not wasting those good decisions on the tiny things, like focusing on like the big things. Exactly. But it's really tricky because I expect you get thrown at you all day. It's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to do all my good decisions between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. so then the rest doesn't matter. No, you've got to make sure there's some good decisions left in you right until the end of your shift. That's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to do. That's really tough. That is really tough. But like you said, building a routine around it, the things that you do have control of, certainly help. So we know what your working day looks like now. So with what you just said around how you're trying to take control of some of those decisions, what
what do you try and plan out as a routine then throughout the day, like even in personal life as well? Like what are you doing to mitigate some of those decisions, even down to like your weekly shop? What are you doing? Are you getting food in? How are you planning the meals? What have you done? What steps have you taken to just eliminate as many of those decisions as you can?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the steps, I guess, have been around our little boy. So he's 18 months now. So we're still really in that shift of becoming parents and like figuring all of that out and factoring that into your day. And he takes up a lot of my brain space, right? Like throughout the day, planning his day. And so we've really, as a couple, kind of systematized his whole day, really.
Yeah.
So like we batch cook like 5 or 6 different dinners for him. He has like 10 portions of each of them in the freezer.
Nice.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so dinner every day is fresh home cooked food. He's getting something nutritious, but it comes out the freezer.
Yeah.
And we heat it up in the microwave
because
that's just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
We do the same with his lunches. We might have lunch out, but he's got a whole load of stuff at home. I'm pretty strict on his routine in terms of like when he goes down for a nap, when we start his bedtime routine, what activities we do during the day. Like it's all just designed to keep him in a like, so it's kind of straight and narrow.
Yeah, like a constant state.
Yeah,
not having any ups and downs.
Yeah, so it's kind of more predictable for him, but also I can just have that little bit of extra brain space to think about other things.
Yeah.
Because when I'm not clinically at work in the hospital and I'm at home with him, I'm also starting a PhD, so I've got a lot of other stuff that needs to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought would be most interesting is being a paediatrician, being pretty rushed off your feet a lot of the time and having to work out how to manage all of that whilst having a child as well is probably all quite heightened by the fact that you're working with kids. So we were chatting just before we started rolling the cameras about how emotionally it's really strange for you to deal with Magnus potentially having issues or anything medical pop up, because naturally, as I would kind of expect, the doctor thing goes out the window and you are first and foremost like a parent.
Yeah.
So what's that been like? Have you encountered anything, or is it something like you feel like, oh, I'm getting better at this now, or is it just like, no, you're just always a parent and all common sense goes out the window the second anything happens?
Yeah, you know what? It's really hard and it's really interesting because I kind of didn't expect it at all. It totally took me by surprise. You know, I'm a paediatrician. When I'm at work, I'm pretty not emotionally disconnected. That's not true. I care about my patients, but you do have to separate yourself a little bit. Because otherwise you can't feel all those emotions all the time.
Someone's got to be the grown-up.
Someone's got to be the grown-up in that situation. You know, parents are having a hard time. You need to separate yourself a bit. And I've always been pretty good at that. But then when I had Magnus, he was in neonatal intensive care for a few days. He was fine. And as a paediatrician, I knew he was fine. I knew I admitted kids like that all the time, and they're fine. He just needed a bit of extra help, a couple of days, some antibiotics. He was fine. But it was awful.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It felt really emotional. And, you know, even as he's got older, there are times where I've been totally irrational about stuff. I took him to the GP after he had 1 temperature. I'm a paediatrician. Yeah. I mean, just ridiculous. And so I think it's definitely made me realise what it's like a little bit being on the other side of what I do.
Yeah.
And how much parents look to you for reassurance and advice about when they do need to be worried and when they don't, because your brain just works in a different way when you're a parent and it's your child.
Yeah,
in a totally different way.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I know full well it's really difficult to decipher the difference between whether you feel like you're being irrational and you don't want to waste anyone's time versus, you know, am I not caring enough? Maybe am I not doing enough? And it's like that battle as a parent is definitely a tricky one. And you certainly do rely on like trying to talk to a GP, a doctor, whoever, to steer you in the right direction.
Yeah, and I've shifted a bit of my patter kind of at the beginning of talking to parents, and I often it just include a sentence of something like, "You did exactly the right thing by bringing them in today."
Yeah.
Because I just want to reassure, like you're not wasting my time. You're not being difficult. You're just advocating for your child. They were unwell. You've brought them to see me. That's what I'm here for. That's my job.
Yeah.
And I just think that little extra sentence of reassurance that they haven't done the wrong thing is maybe helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as well, I think if you, as a young parent, like as you're learning everything, if you do make the effort to go in, I think you're sort of working that muscle. Then you're starting to learn when you should worry, when you shouldn't worry. You're sort of like, oh, it's okay if I go and do this. I don't need to worry about that, and maybe it does put you at ease a little bit more. So you and your husband are both on shift work and both working in the NHS.
Yeah, so Tim's a maxillofacial surgeon, so a head and neck surgeon.
Yeah. So between the two of you, you're definitely racking up some hours.
Yeah.
Are you passing ships in the night, or do you manage to tie things up? How does all that play out?
It's difficult. It has to be run pretty strictly. So we look at both of our on-call rotas kind of a few months ahead of time.
Yeah.
And we know exactly when he's on call and when I'm on call. We obviously can't be on call at the same time.
Right.
So his on calls are 24-hour shifts. So he can come home at night, but if he gets called, he will have to go back into hospital.
Right.
So I can't be on a night shift in hospital, because then Magnus would be at home on his own, which is obviously not ideal.
No.
So yeah, we have to be very strict about swapping shifts if needed. We can't be on call at the same time, and also very strict about having someone to do nursery pickups and drop-offs and all of that.
Yeah.
So it can be a little bit like you're just sort of passing a child between you a little bit. Like one of you goes to work and one of you takes the child, and then you just swap back and forwards. But we're getting there in terms of like settling into that routine a little bit more, and trying to carve out bits of time for us as a couple again.
Yeah. So I know for me, when me and Megan were filming weddings in the earlier days, we were married ourselves, but I was never like hugely emotionally connected to the weddings. I didn't really think much of it, in a sense. I didn't really feel much when I was watching speeches and brides. Megan was always quite emotional about it. She always really liked it. It was a good speech or a good whatever. I was like, I'm just doing the job.
Yeah.
And then the second we had Isabella, all of a sudden, bearing in mind I'm not a very emotional person, I'm pretty straight down the line. All of a sudden, I was like thinking about the brides and the dads, and I was like, oh, this might be me one day. And I started to feel really emotional at the weddings, like seeing all the brides and the dads walking them down, and then the dad's speech, and I was like, I might be doing this one day. And it all become like really real.
Yeah.
You sort of had a similar thing in working with kids and then having a kid. Has it completely changed the emotional structure? Is it harder to separate yourself from it? Has it been like a lot more tricky handling maybe tougher situations and diagnoses?
Yeah. There's no denying that it changes your mindset. I actually read this really interesting study the other day which said that you can actually see structural changes in mums' brains after they've had a baby on an MRI scan compared to before. So like it physically changes the structure of your brain becoming a parent. It's not just hormones and emotions. No. It physically changes you. So there's no way it can't impact what you do. And yeah, it makes it harder in some situations. I would say when there are emotional things going on with children of a similar age, that's tricky.
Yeah.
My first day back after maternity leave, I dealt with a child the same age, going through some safeguarding child protection concerns. And yeah, that's emotional.
Yeah.
seeing kids of a similar age who you kind of want to scoop up and protect.
I suppose on the flip side, though, you also have gained a next level empathy and understanding for a lot of the parents maybe as well.
Yeah, I think I definitely have more of an understanding of what I'm asking of parents some of the time. So a kind of good example is very little babies under 3 months, if they have a temperature, we take that really seriously. And we do quite a lot of investigations. So we'll put a cannula in and do blood tests, but we'll also do something called a lumbar puncture, where we put a needle into the bottom of their spine. And my little boy had to have that when he was first born. So I just kind of understand what I'm asking parents to trust me with.
Yeah.
Their most precious possession in the whole world, I'm asking them to trust me, someone they met probably 5 minutes ago, to take their baby and do something quite invasive to them. Just I think I get a lot more what I'm asking of them to trust me with.
I feel exactly the same when I have to take one of my guitars to the tech shop.
It's the same thing, right?
It's a high stress
It's your
situation.
baby.
Yeah, my most important possession. Okay, so I think from an outside perspective, right, being a doctor is one of those things where it encompasses you as a person. So when I see friends or people from school, college, people I haven't seen for years, I am an entrepreneur. That is like my thing. I run different businesses, and there's plenty of careers out there where people flitter between different jobs, and it doesn't necessarily define their persona.
Yeah.
But a doctor is definitely one of those things where you are that person.
Yeah.
But before all of that, you were probably a very different person. Lots of travel, jumping out of planes.
Yeah.
And how do you ever see yourself getting back to that? And how do you envision it? Because obviously so much of your time is taken up with your job. It's not super flexible.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just say, I'm just going to go and have 6 months off. Well, I mean, you probably can if it's well planned, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, you're not completely in control and flexible with that time. And I know you spoke about side hustles, different ways of achieving actually what you want out of your life, while also having a career that's really fulfilling but extremely intensive.
Yeah. I love my job in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't want to stop doing it completely. But since I've had a family, a bit more financial freedom and kind of flexibility to spend more time with my family, do the things we want to do together, get back to traveling more together, is really important to me, and increasingly important. And I'm not going to get that from my job. You know, it pays okay, but it's not huge amounts. So I increasingly feel like I want to drop my hours that I'm doing in that, and start thinking about side hustles and different ways to build a financial future that looks more like better balance, a better work-life mix.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, I've definitely spent a long time trying to work out what that balance is. I don't know if it's possible to ever figure it out. It's more just to like trying to keep the plate spinning.
Exactly.
At the same time. One thing I've been thinking about loads recently though is like different types of freedom, because there's on one hand there is financial freedom, having enough money to do whatever you want, but you could be financially free. You could have a hugely successful business that does millions of pounds in revenue, but if you're tied to that business, as in you have to be there to run it or you have to work inside it, you don't have time freedom or location freedom.
Yeah.
But you could have a business with a digital product that just sells a couple of £1,000s of something a month. And sure, it's not millions of pounds, but it does enable you to then have time, and your location is free. Out of those three, time, finance, and location, is there like one of those that stands out to you as like, that's the one I want? I want to be able to do what I want when I want, or I want to be able to go where I want when I want? or I just want to have loads of money and buy 7 Lamborghinis.
I definitely don't just want loads of money to buy 7 Lamborghinis. I don't know that. I don't think location is as important to me, because I feel like my family is super important to me, and my family are here. So yeah, I love traveling. I love exploring new places, but I don't want to move halfway across the world. So I'm good where I am in that sense. So, I mean, it's probably a combination of time and finance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like I want the time to be able to do the stuff that I really love doing, but you've got to have money to be able to do those things. Like, and I also just increasingly kind of don't want, ideally, finances to be the limiting factor in decisions that I'm making for my family and my child. You know, I don't want to. The best school for Magnus might not be a private school, but if it is, I don't want to not be able to send him there because of finances.
Yeah.
So a kind of combination of time and financial freedom would be the ideal.
Yeah, I think, I'm probably pretty much on the same page. Like, I like to definitely have control of time. Finance side of stuff, I think the hardest part of that to understand for me anyway was like finding where that cutoff is.
Yeah,
because otherwise you set a goal and you hit it, and then you set the next one, you hit it, and
it's always creeping away from you.
Yeah, it's just an endless treadmill. But time is always, I found that to be a really good target actually, because there is only so much. So there is, at some point, if you freed up all 24 hours, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So you can actually achieve that, like, and not keep stretching the target further and further away.
Yeah, I think my kind of ideal working week would look like 3 days a week of clinical kind of NHS work, maybe a day a week of input into whatever side hustle that is, and then having the rest of the time, 3 days a week free to do what I want to do. And that might not look like a day a week and 3 days a week, but broadly,
something like
that kind of separation.
Well, what's cool is, from your current career and busy timetable, you've pretty much got all the skills you need to be able to manage your time and make that happen.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's the ideas and coming up with where am I going to go with this? What am I going to do? What do I want to do?
It's the ideas, but it's also the confidence, I think. And I think that's maybe what a lot of people lack, and what I've lacked up to this point, is the confidence to say that you have something to offer.
Yeah.
I now feel like I'm far enough along in my medical career. I've been a paediatrician for long enough that I do have some specialist knowledge, and I do have something that other people don't know, and that I can be helpful with. And finding exactly what that niche is one thing, and it's difficult, but it's also having the confidence to say, I do potentially have something that I can offer to people.
Yeah.
That's useful and that's beneficial, and that people would pay you for.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's got something to offer in that respect. Like, I was talking to Simon about this actually, and I think there's so many people who I follow, and podcasts and books I read, and a lot of these entrepreneurs are running portfolios that are doing hundreds of millions of pounds.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, and it's really like motivating to read. But in terms of actual actionable steps, I'm not really thinking where my next £100 million investment's coming from just yet.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
So it's nice for building yourself up, but actually what you really need is someone who's just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you to sort of tow you along.
Totally.
So yeah, I struggled with that for a long time. And even when I was thinking about starting stuff like this, I put it off for a long time, thinking like you had to be some sort of magical expert who knew everything and already had the 100 million in the bank. And then I was like, oh, hang on, no, you don't. Like, if you've got 100,000, someone's got 10 and they want to know how to get there. If you've got a million, someone's got 100 and they want to work out how to get there.
Totally.
So there's always somebody to help. And then as you grow and level up, I think your audience just moves with you. So that's really cool. I think getting started is the hard bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been exactly the same, kind of toying with, when do I start something? When do I think about moving this kind of side hustle idea forwards? And I recently just decided to start some kind of social media stuff around parent education, and connecting with parents on kind of simple child health issues that all parents come up against, and kind of trying to demystify them slightly, offer some reassurance, offer some real advice on when parents need to seek help, that kind of thing. And I ummed and ahed about it for a lot of the time, because I wanted it to be perfect when I started it. But eventually I was just like, no, you just need to start, because that's the hardest bit. And once you're going, you'll learn and you'll grow and it will evolve as you evolve.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think just starting is probably the hardest bit.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like, from my perspective, the ideas that you're thinking of potentially starting, I think most parents would agree, it's just nice to have a little bit of community, someone to chat to, a bit of a mastermind thing, maybe just to catch up once a week with like a bunch of people. Regardless of whether there's any health issues, it's more just a like, are we on the right track? Is this okay? Because you literally have no idea when you first start. You completely make it up. Like, I know from now having Jessie, we look back at when we had Isabella when she was little.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what were we doing? Like, that is insane. Like, the stuff we used to do was nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I've got videos of Megan with Isabella in the pram, in the lounge, like, binge watching some housewife TV show, pushing back and forth for like an hour and 20 minutes trying to get her to nap. And I was like, the terrible habits we built.
Yeah.
And like Jessie, it's just been like a breeze, because like now we feel like we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I know for like, certainly for first time parents, just having a little bit of like someone who's done it that isn't, because it's tricky to talk about it with friends and parents, because people can be a little bit too opinionated. You kind of just want the facts. You just want someone who's like been through it just to be like, this is fine, don't worry about that, yeah, this will fix itself. Like,
yeah, exactly, definitely. I mean, a post that kind of did quite well the other day, which was kind of unexpected, was I just did a little thing about growth charts. You know, everyone gets their little red book with the growth charts in the back, and you kind of do little dots for where their weight is. And I just did a simple thing about when you need to worry about the growth going up or down. Like, what are our thresholds for when I'm actually worried and when I'm actually going to do any investigations? Which is basically if it crosses two lines. Yeah. It's a really simple rule, right? But like, no one tells parents that.
No.
And loads of people commenting being like, oh, I never knew this. This is so useful. And you're like, yeah, it is useful having someone who just knows a really simple fact like that means that you don't have to worry. Oh, your kid dropped one line on the growth chart. I don't, it doesn't matter. They'll be fine. They'll figure it out.
That's so true. We literally had exactly that, where like with Isabella, same thing. We would have worried about every little fluctuation. With Jessie, that kid just flatlined. Like, he would not grow. Like, he just quit growing for like the first few months. Had that been our first, we probably would have been really worried.
So worried, yeah.
But nonetheless, we naturally, as second child, just didn't care. We just let him do his thing.
Poor Jessie.
I know.
Poor second child.
And then one thing just changed. He stopped breastfeeding. He started having bottles of milk, and now he's like a Buddha. Like, so
yeah, he looks pretty well grown.
Yeah, he's definitely doing. Yeah, now he's on the opposite end of the spectrum. Now we've got friends and parents saying, yeah, he's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
He's stretching out now, though. I think it'll work out okay.
Yeah, he'll settle on where he's meant to be on his line. It'll be all good.
Okay, so I've got some quick fire questions that I'm attempting to ask pretty much every guest.
Okay.
Have you got a favourite book or podcast you're listening to? Doesn't have to be a specific podcast, but maybe a host you love, or maybe a book that's really made a big change in the last year.
Yeah, it's maybe not a very exciting one, but I've really got into The Rest is Politics recently, which is a podcast run by Roy Stewart and Alistair Campbell, just discussing like current affairs. And so there's a Conservative and an ex-Labour person. So you kind of get both sides of the coin on it, because I think I often get myself in a little bit of an echo chamber, always around people who have the same political views.
Sure.
So it's just nice to keep up with current affairs, but also get something that challenges my own viewpoint on it, so that I'm not just always thinking the same thing. Yeah,
I can imagine, like, if those conversational topics are popping up in the mess or whatever, I expect a lot of people have very similar opinions.
Yeah, a lot of doctors are pretty left-leaning, right? Like, that's by the nature of, who we are and what we've decided to do. Not all of us. but broadly people are pretty left leaning.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. And this opens you up to that.
Yeah, it's just like, I think it's useful to be challenged, even if I'm never going to be right wing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, if you're happy to argue any side of a particular point, and you're extremely emotional about the other side of it, chances are you probably just haven't learned enough about that person's viewpoint to completely understand it.
Yeah, exactly. My own dad is a little bit right wing, and I want to have reasonable conversations with him about the NHS and why we disagree.
Yeah.
Without
Cool.
it being over emotional.
Yeah. Okay, next up. Is there a particular habit that you've tried to develop over the last year that you feel has made a really big impact on your quality of life?
Yeah, it's a really boring one though.
I think the good ones are.
So I've always been a total night owl. I've always been better at the end of the day and doing good work into the early hours of the morning. Ever since I've had my little boy, he's an absolutely abysmal sleeper.
Okay.
And he gets up at stupid o'clock in the morning. And I just got to a point where I was burning the candle at both ends and I was so tired. And I crashed the car, not a major crash, but like that was a thing that made me realise I'm so tired, I can't function. And so me and my husband have both been super strict in the last year. At 9 o'clock, the telly goes off and we go upstairs. And I'm usually asleep by 10.
Yeah.
And that means I can get a decent stretch of sleep before all his 4 a.m. shenanigans start so that I'm functional.
Yeah.
And that, just being strict on that, screen off, wind down, go upstairs, go to bed.
Yeah.
Has changed my life, honestly.
Yeah, funnily enough, I'm exactly the same. I literally spoke about this in a post I put out yesterday. I was very much a night out, even to the point where pre-kids, I would be happily working all night. It was never a problem because I had nothing to be up for.
Yeah.
And then when having our first child, it worked really well because Megan would go up to bed at about 8. And then I would just literally sit, work, child in the sleepy head, and just doing this, bottling, doing it, and just work. And I would work until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then would go to bed, and then she could kind of take over if there was any wake ups and stuff. But as sleep patterns started to get a little bit more routine, definitely the best thing I ever did was trying to go to sleep at 10 and then getting up at 6. And it's funny because I spent 10 years thinking, oh, I'm a night owl, and then I actually went to bed and I was like, oh yeah, I get a lot done in the morning.
Oh yeah, I can be productive in the morning. Yeah,
I'm actually way better.
I'm totally the same, and it is amazing. And when you're forced to get up at 5:36 every day, actually, I'm pretty good in the morning now. I can get a lot done before 9.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I can get most of my day done between 6 and 10.
Yeah.
And there's been the odd occasion where I had to do quite a lot when we were up in London. I had to do quite a lot of work at night because we had early mornings.
Yeah.
And I realised I'm just so inefficient at night.
Yeah.
I'm already tired.
Sluggish, right? Yeah, I'm totally the same now.
Cool. That's a big one. All right, I like this one because it always surprises me usually. I won't tell you anyone else's, but what is something about yourself that people might be surprised to know? So any little hidden gems in there?
Any hidden gems? I think that a lot of people, when I talk to them at work, particularly because I've got this doctor persona at work, right? Are kind of a little bit surprised that I maybe had a slightly wild teenage years. So, nothing too crazy. I was always a very good girl at school. Never got in any trouble or anything like that. But outside of school, yeah, definitely had a bit of a wild time. And my parents had a tricky time raising me for a while.
Yeah.
And I think people find that a little bit surprising. I've got quite a few tattoos that are all hidden away when I'm at work. So when people find out stuff like that, they're a bit like, oh, didn't expect that.
Yeah.
That side of you kind of thing.
Cool. I think that goes hand in hand though with being a high performer.
I think so.
I don't know anyone who's done really well in life and has achieved, certain things without being a bit nuts.
No, you've got to be the sort, to get anywhere, you've got to be the sort of person who pushes boundaries, right? And so in your teenage years, that can look pretty messy.
Totally.
But it's just an expression of who you are and the fact that you're the sort of person who's going to test where the limits are.
Yeah, you can't be average.
No.
fourth quickfire question. Mm-hmm. If you could have a coffee and a chat with anyone, past or present, who would it be?
Yeah, so this is maybe not someone most people will have heard of, but there's a lady called Elizabeth Blackwell who was one of the first female doctors in both the States and the UK.
Okay.
And I only know about her because I got some funding to do some research that was, it's named after her. And I did some reading about her. The reason I'd be fascinated to talk to her is just because she's a woman who thrived in this totally male-dominated industry. And I just find people like that totally fascinating. Like, women who can go into that environment and boss it and not be intimidated by the fact that they're surrounded by, high-flying men. Yeah,
well, she had to have been so unbelievably good and captivating at what she was doing.
100%.
To have cut through.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's always tricky to be able to, and it's not, doesn't just go for, women in an industry like that. It can be literally anything, cutting through into any industry, from coming from a place of maybe obscurity.
Yeah.
To be so good that people just can't ignore you anymore, and you just have to accept the fact that, okay, this is definitely adding something happening. Massive. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, amazing. Oh, I hadn't heard of her. I definitely need to check that out. Okay, final quickfire question. Do you have a main goal or focus at the moment, and what is it?
I think probably twofold. So I'm starting my PhD in September. That for me is kind of trying to build my clinical research career as well, alongside my clinical pediatrics. So that's going to be a really important few years of making sure that work is good and building collaborations, building connections in the scientific world, so that I can do some impactful medical research throughout my career. So that's a huge one for me. And the other one is trying to build some kind of side hustle to give me that little bit more time and finance moving forward. Those are kind of my two main focuses.
Yeah, with the PhD then, what exactly does that entail? And is there something you're focused on as to why you're going down that route? Because obviously it's even more on a full plate.
Yeah, so I am doing some work on a bug called Group A strep, which a lot of people have probably heard of now because there was a big outbreak of it about a year ago in the news, and unfortunately quite a few children and adults died.
Right.
It's a bug that causes sore throats, like tonsillitis and some skin infections, but also causes like more severe infections, sepsis, and also problems with hearts and kidneys, lots of different things. And so the scientific community is trying to generate a vaccine against this bug. We're a long way off that, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But my PhD is kind of focused on an aspect of that work. I think I just enjoy the idea of generating new ideas and new things that can save a lot of lives. Like day to day in my clinical work, a lot of what I do is not life-saving. You might save 1 or 2 lives. If you can be part of something...
Just 1 or 2.
If you can be part of something that creates a new vaccine...
Yeah.
This bug kills 500,000 people a year. What if you could stop that? It's like bigger questions, And for me, that's something that keeps me interested and engaged beyond my day-to-day seeing lots of kids with colds.
Yeah. It's not really, from a mindset perspective, it's not dissimilar to your plans behind building out something as a side hustle for yourself. You're essentially taking the skill that you have and trying to find a way to make it scalable.
Yeah, exactly.
Affect as many people as possible for the work you're putting in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate
it. It's so interesting getting some insight into what is a very far throw away from certainly my day-to-day, and I'm sure many people listening. I think it sounds like you're doing an amazing job of it.
Well, we're surviving.
Yeah, well, that's good. Awesome. Well, listen, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Rachel, for coming on.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you in the next one.